Welcome, everyone, to another Coach the Coaches. Today's co-host is Sarah from the Thompson River University women's team, the assistant coach. And then our special guest for the second time is now the new head coach of the women's national team, Shannon Winzer. Thank you both for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Right on. Yeah, no, I mean, these have been going really well. So like everyone who checks in and watches, feel free to just add questions in the comment section. We'll be going and filtering through those, but we're on here for an hour, and I'll just throw it over to Sarah to start us off.
Great, sounds good. Thanks, Dave. I know Shannon had you on for a call this summer with our girls, and it was really awesome to talk to you. And something I really took away from that call when you were talking about getting your athletes to be fearless as they compete. And I just, my question is, what are some things that you do to create environments like that your athletes want to embody and buy into that system?
Well, number one, I think competition is a huge part of that. I think especially with women, I think how we compete and making sure competition is part of every aspect of our training, from warm up to, our typical training would be, competition to start off with. And then we, go into a learning kind of isolated stuff. And then there's always that huge chunk of the training, which is going to be competition. And I think as coaches, how we promote this fearlessness is in our language and in our actions. So if we're asking an athlete to find that next level of serving, we can't be punishing, service errors. We can't make them afraid to make errors. We're asking them to try something new in attack. Well, why are we then punishing them for an error, or why are we getting down on them for an error? We should be embracing the errors. And I think as coaches, the more we celebrate, hey, that was awesome, I saw you get after that, or I saw you really try something new, or I can see what you're trying to do there, that's awesome. I think the more the athlete can feel that we're embracing the failure as much as we need them to explore and to get better, I think that's how we can create that environment. So it's really unpacking. I think every time that we run a session or we're introducing something new, I get frustrated when the volleyball gets cracked. I get frustrated just like every other coach, but checking myself and making sure that my language and my actions are in line with, the environment we want to build, and making sure our staff, we have that conversation all the time as staff. Hey, we want to, when we worked with NEP this past fall, these are young athletes who are trying new things, and, we champion them on an individual basis, but when we're as a group, be like, hey, I saw you get after the ball. I see you go after that shot cross court angle. That was why, that was so awesome that you went after that. And really just making sure that's part of the conversation. And, if all your staff are on board, you can keep each other in check as well.
Yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, just really helping encourage the athletes for just trying new things like that. So it's just something I really try to do when I do a lot of individual coaching with some young kids. So it's always about let's just get uncomfortable right now and try something different. So,
and I think it's that balance as well. It's not always going to be hey, we do have to score points. So it's finding that balance and understanding, especially serving is such a good example. We talk about positive errors. So if we're in a game and, if they're missing multiple serves in a row, then maybe that's when you get a negative point. Or if they're serving into the net or out the side, that's a negative point. But out the back, that's just a neutral point. So looking at how you score things is a big way of how you're, reinforcing the things you want to achieve.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Another thing I wanted to ask you is, where do you think Canada right now struggles internationally compared to some other programs?
Yeah, that's such a good question. We did a giant gap analysis where I looked at where Canada ranks against the top teams in the world, and that top teams is sort of a kind of a vague statement. They had to have qualified for one of the last two Olympics or be top 24 in the world, and that there's a reason for that. But if you look at where we are against those teams, the biggest standout is passing. In system, we can compete with the best in the world. We can play on the pins and we can play against the best in the world in system, but we're not in system very much. And our attack efficiency off a medium to negative ball decreases significantly compared to the top teams in the world. So not only are we not in system as much as them, but when we're out of system, we're not as effective as them. So those are the biggest gaps. I think we made, with Tom, we made some really big upgrades in attack. We've made some really big upgrades in serving. That kind of analysis is, yeah, we're getting digs, but our percentage of digs to quality attacks is a lot lower. And then obviously that translates into our transition efficiency. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think that, there's a bit that we can do at the senior national team level where we're improving our, our technical and tactical. And yeah, we're going to continue to work on our service reception and our attack efficiency, and then looking out of our out of system attack and how we can improve that efficiency. But a lot of this is the technical side and how we teach passing and how we teach attacking, and that's where I see things like NEP and the younger ages coming in. The biggest technical change that we're going to make is through, in the next 8 years, not in the next 12 months.
Yeah, and that kind of segue perfectly into the other question I had about what you really think about what we need to do at a younger age to help our athletes once they get to that international stage of how we're going to be able to compete by starting from building from the bottom up.
Yeah, the biggest thing is, first of all, I totally recognize the challenges we have in club, and we need to win games, and we have the people we have in front of us, and sometimes the mix of athletes is the mix of athletes, and we've got to put people in positions that are just going to benefit the team and the club. But I would love for everybody to be taught to pass, everyone, because your 6'1" middle isn't going to be a 6'1" international middle. Their actually biggest chances are probably on the pins, and it doesn't mean you need to play them there. But imagine if we could teach everyone to pass at training, everyone was getting the same amount of passing reps, even at the university levels, so that when they graduate, they have that flexibility of moving out to the pins. I think we need to do a much better job of teaching passing in this country, a much better job. And I just think as a whole we can teach it to the big girls, because those big girls, they also develop later. Obviously the 5'8", 5'9" outside hitters. They're great volleyball players at 16, 17, 18 years old. The tall girls take a little bit longer to come to the party. The tall girls are a little bit longer to be coordinated, and so we sort of put them in this box because, well, they're not as coordinated as my 5'9", but I tell you, we're looking at that big girl who's uncoordinated at 16, and we need her to be working on ball control, and her to be working on playing the ball as much as possible. Not just, for 3 rotations across the front. So that's where I think we could make the biggest change.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I'm laughing because that was me growing up when I was so tall, and my club coach would be he's like, I always knew when you were growing, because one week you'd get it, and the next week it all just went to hell.
Family on ice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, passing especially. And there's something I wonder too, I always question, I know in club, for certain ages, they're not allowed to pass with their hands until they get to a certain level. And I find but in high school they are. So there's this mix, there's not a streamline around what should happen. And that's one thing I noticed working with the university girls, is there's a lot of times they really struggle passing with their hands because they weren't taught from a younger age on how to handle passing with your hands when the serve's not being bombed at them at that point. So yeah.
It is something that's probably undertrained. I'm gonna show my age, but we weren't allowed to use our hands. It was illegal when I'm talking when I played high school, so I'm not that.
Yeah.
But so it is something that is undertrained. I think there's this notion that women aren't strong enough in their hands to be able to be able to direct a hard float, and I don't know if that's the case. I think it could be that we just don't train it enough at the younger ages. And I was always nervous to take it with my hands as well. And we also find a lot of the athletes now, because when you're passing, you're always, you're facing the ball and you're angling your platform to target. But when you're using your hands, you have to already be facing target. You can't redirect a ball with your hands. You have to already get to the target. And I think that there's that key difference that we just don't train it a ton. And honestly, at international levels, I don't see very many passers use their hands.
Yeah.
So I'm not losing sleep over it too much.
Yeah. That's fair. Well, thank you. I'm going to throw it over to Dave now. So
right on. Thanks, Sarah. A question from Jeff Anderson from Red Deer, Alberta. First off, congrats on your new position. Are your two-part question? Are your philosophies extremely different than Tom's were? How much will you have to adjust focus for team? I have heard so much growth, mindset, focus, have huge gains with Team Canada. That's all he wrote. So, yeah, two-part question there.
Okay, I'll attempt to answer.
Yeah.
Philosophies is, and Tom would probably agree, is such a big word, and I find this really just coaching principles. Tom and I are pretty well aligned. I spent a lot of time with Tom, and I have a ton of respect for him. I don't think our principles vary greatly. I think we want to both create a really strong learning environment for athletes, and we want to continue to work for an environment where we can continue to balance the learning aspect with the competition aspect. I am a very relationships focused coach, so that connection and allowing time to build trust and build that relationship with the athletes so that we can work at our best, I think is really important. I know Tom valued that as much as well. Our technical and tactical, we don't vary too much. The thing is, with Tom and I, Tom is a great teacher. I spent, a year and a half with him. So when he leaves, he doesn't take his knowledge with him. I think we still benefit from all the knowledge he kind of instilled with the program. So I don't think you're going to see a ton of change between, what Tom was doing with Team Canada and what I'm going to attempt to do with Team Canada. We have a very short lead-in time to what we hope will be VNL. So the changes we will make will be the need to changes, not the just for the sake of it because there's a new coach in town. But how we operate obviously is different. Tom is like this unbelievably intelligent man who speaks so eloquently, and I'm not Tom. And I'm not going to try and be Tom, but I know the things that we value on how we work with athletes and how athletes learn and understanding of the sciences behind learning and motor learning principles. I buy into that as much as he does. So I don't think there's going to be much of a difference in what we do. I think obviously naturally with the change of personnel and how we do it, and I have my strengths and weaknesses and he has his strengths and weaknesses, so there'll be some small changes there. I don't know if I answered that all. Was that all?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay, I nailed it.
Yeah, right on. One other thing, there's a couple people in the chat just saying that you're a bit quiet, and they said their volume's on max. So feel free to shout into the microphone, Shannon. So
that is the first time I've been called quiet.
yeah. So
Okay, I'll move a bit closer. I don't know.
Sure. We'll go with it. So one more question here is from Jared Mathis, more of a club level question. When I coached youth volleyball, the problem with getting players to embrace and build on failure was their parents. The parents over focus on failure and can sabotage anything the coach is trying to do. How do we get parents on board as coaches at a club level?
I always wonder, and I haven't really been a club coach, so I might give you suggestions and you're like, we just totally can't do that. So Dave and Sarah, please let me know if I'm totally off my rocker. But I mean, do we share resources with parents? Do we give them information on learning? And do we give them, do we sit down at the start of the season and say, hey guys, these are my principles as a coach. I want us to be fearless. This is what learning looks like. We know if we're pushing the boundaries, we're failing, and that means we're at the next rung on the ladder. That's what, that's why failure is so important. We can't actually get better unless we fail. And so the errors that you're going to see, we're probably going to be pushing the boundaries a lot more at the start of the season. So you're going to see a lot more error volleyball. We're going to see a lot more failure at the start, but we're going to stay committed to that because I really believe in the way that we're playing. I really believe in this style of volleyball. And as we get better at, those errors are going to decrease and we're going to peak at the right time. And I wonder if those types of conversations would benefit. And maybe it's an initial conversation at the start where you unpack your coaching principles and how you see the season playing out and make failure put failure right front and center of how you see learning happening within the club, but also how you see performance unraveling throughout the season. I don't know. I know as a parent, I sit there and cringe every time my kid touches a soccer ball. I'm like, oh, please don't be terrible. And I totally get that. But I know the conversations we're having in the car on the way home are definitely around, hey, Matt, that was awesome how you tried really hard there. That was, I'm trying to embrace the failure side, but that took a while for me to learn. So let's, I'm in the coaching space. Let's not assume parents understand the role failure has in learning. And I wonder if we can help them kind of explore that a little bit more in those initial meetings and initial conversations.
Sarah, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, that's definitely the parent thing. I've had that a lot with some of the club kids I coach, but I agree, like right from the initial part, I find I don't have as many instances with parents if I get really clear with them from the beginning about like what my philosophy is for this season and stuff. And I get very clear also that I'm like, your athlete is the one that needs to talk to me because they're the one who's going to change things. So yeah,
she's coached by like an 18-year-old young girl, and early on she had this meeting with parents, and she was totally straight on it. She's like, this is how we're going to operate. This is what I expect from you, and this is what your role is as a parent. And I walked away. I went and spoke to her after. I said, man, it's her first time ever coaching this young 18-year-old girl. I said, that was awesome. I go, well done. Like, that's a tough conversation to have. And whether or not she did it, the way I would have done it is different. But the fact that she realized that was important, and she was really, really honest with a group of parents, I think that was really cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it goes a long way if you're like really clear from the beginning with your parents. So, so I know you did the National Excellence Program this year, and this is the first time for it, right?
Yep.
How was the first time with it, and then what would you love to see this program evolve to over the years?
I am so proud of the National Excellence Program. It was an amazing program. I think we had amazing staff. We had a great group of athletes, and I think my experiences in Australia, setting up the Center of Excellence and running the Center of Excellence, kind of helped me kind of prepare for the National Excellence Program. What I would like to see happen is I would like to see it kind of be longer than 4 months. I'd like to see it, be open to maybe looking at more athletes, but obviously we had some constraints with COVID. We weren't able to compete as much as we wanted. At the very beginning, we could compete under the restrictions we were in at the very start of the fall, and then pretty soon we could only just compete against each other. And that made for a really long fall, but it was actually okay. So obviously going forward, I want to increase the amount of competition that the athletes can do. I want to increase the amount of international exposure. So maybe there's some international competitions that we could bring NEP to. I would like to see, I don't know how it would work, because I think club volleyball is really important for these athletes. I think it's important for them to play for other coaches. I think it's important for exposure for recruiting process as well. But how do you maybe work with the athletes a little bit longer? I'd like to explore that. But yeah, it was fantastic. I don't think we could have asked for a better group of athletes and a better, staff to be able to deliver that program. So it's something I'm really, really proud of.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and remember when you were talking about it this summer when you came on the call, I was like, this is just sounds so exciting for like such a new opportunity to help volleyball grow in Canada too, to be like, to also get competitive on the international scale as well, to start working with those athletes at a younger age too. So
yeah, I think that the main, I really try and look at it from, it's really just about, aligning them technically and tactically with the senior national team. So the first 4 or 5 weeks was really just kind of an information dump. Like, these are the technical keys. This is the language we use. This is what it means. I'm showing video. This is what it looks like. And then we would come back and dive into each skill a little bit more. The competition was obviously lacking, but then we could expose them to, all the sports sciences that we're working with. They were lifting full time. They were working with, our athletic therapist full time. We have a mental performance and clinical counselor on staff. We have nutritionists on staff. So they got exposure to all these different aspects of high performance, and it was kind of like their eyes were just wide open, and they were just learning, and they were hungry for more. But it was just like this wow, this is what it's all about. And then be able to, we had so many coaches reach out to us, and be able to then share information through the athletes and encouraging the athlete to take the information they've learned and share it with their coaches. And hopefully it can be a catalyst for greater technical and tactical alignment. I know there's a ton of work to do there, and I know that, we have to do a lot of that work. But I just smile when I look back, and yeah, I love it. It was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, it seems just from following along with it too, it just seemed like such an awesome opportunity for these young athletes. Like that you could just see how much they were loving getting this experience, especially during these times too. It was so cool for them to have something exciting to look forward to and still compete in this sport. So
there wasn't a day that went by that you didn't walk into the gym and know that you're working with a group of athletes who kind of recognize that they were super privileged to be there, and they were part of something great, and they were just down to earth. They wanted to just get better every single day. So it was, yeah. I hope that continues. I think that we're trying to establish a culture that's part of the national team, but that it goes down to NEP and how we work and how we operate, and they really embrace that. So next year's the challenge when you now merge two groups together. You have a returning group and you have a new group, and what does that look like? I always find your second year is far more challenging than your first year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because it's a whole new blend of like personalities coming together and stuff too. So that's awesome though. I'm trying to think. Dave, I'll throw it over to you.
Sounds good. So Shannon, what is your role going to be with the Next Gen program now that you're the head coach of the women's team?
Yeah, well, they are looking to hire for a Next Gen role. So I will be overseeing the Next Gen program, and I'll oversee National Excellence program, but I won't be the one necessarily doing the day-to-day running of it. So I tried to hang on to the National Excellence program, like, let me keep it. But obviously we might have international competition during the September and October period, which would then conflict with National Excellence program. So the intention is to hire for those positions. And I will be overseeing it and mentoring the coaches and working with the coaches. And of course I'll be on court. I don't think they can get rid of me that quickly. I feel sorry for that coach who will take over because I'll be there. But yeah, I'll definitely be more of a mentoring and overseeing role than I am in an actual day-to-day operations role.
Do you think that this program will turn into an East and West type of program, or will it always be in Richmond?
You mean having two National Excellence programs?
Yeah, so that you can, like maybe there are some talented athletes that just can't get to Richmond, something like that. But like, do you see it happening in, Quebec and as well as in Vancouver?
Well, Quebec has their own version of the National Excellence program, and I kind of put that at the same, not the same level, but I'd like to see there to be. I know there are rep programs, but I'd like to see us be a little bit more purposeful with our rep, and perhaps that being a feeder into NEP. But I do see the National Excellence program staying in Richmond and just being one. But I would like us to see us be a little bit more strategic with how we work with rep in all the other provinces, and perhaps that becomes a feeder into NEP. Just like Quebec. So in Quebec, they have their full-time program there. But if they ever had an athlete who was ready to come into National Excellence program, they would have no problems feeding them into our National Excellence program. So it's working together. But I see that as National Excellence program being, the best of the best in Canada and the highest priority athletes, but us also then putting resources into the next level of athlete or the next age group of athletes. And whether that's right now, we don't have anything that we clearly see as a pathway. I think, there's tons of opportunity with rep to use it in that way. But no, at this stage, I don't see it being East and West.
So let's go further into that. I'm going to ask some tough questions here, Shannon. So bear with me.
Yeah, and you might have to give me some of the history lessons too.
No problem. I mean, is there anything that how much power do you have now with the National Association to try to create programs that, the club's club, but I mean, a program that feeds into Next Gen, which feeds into the national team, et cetera, et cetera. Like, are there any things any sort of ideas that you have in your head that you want to see changed or implemented in the next, let's say 3 to 4 years, where we can have a easier transition and get more athletes in at that high performance level?
Yeah, well, I definitely think club is club, and I don't ever think we need to replace club. I think club has its role and is a really beneficial part of the athlete's development. But I think I look at something like rep and I wonder, okay, can this become more of a pathway for for athletes, for identifying athletes, for working with athletes, either the next age group under NEP or even the athletes who are just shy of making NEP, because we're only working with 16 athletes at NEP. And I'm sure there's a ton more athletes out there who have the potential to eventually develop into high performance. Could we use something like REP more as a coach pathway? So now we're working to technically and tactically align coaches and athletes through the REP program. Is this a way, could it be a development pathway for S&C coaches? Could it be a development pathway for other scientists, for analysts even? And I think there needs to be more of a pathway for coaches, not just athletes, but coaches as well as other support staff and other sports scientists. And, REP's the first thing that comes to my mind. But obviously, there's probably other ideas out there. And the power, I don't have power, but what I do have is I have time, and I'm super passionate about this, and I'm very committed. So being part of the conversation, throwing ideas out there, really talking to the right people with Volleyball Canada about how we can make this work, and marrying it into the bigger vision. We talk, obviously, our sole purpose is to qualify for an Olympics. It's to qualify for 2024, qualify for 2028. So how do we marry that to that vision? How do we marry that to that goal? And I think the only way we are going to get to that is if we are developing more athletes. We're increasing our talent pool of athletes. We're getting more athletes, meaningful international experience. But we're also doing the same sort of development with our coaches. We're working with our coaches so that they understand the whys and the whats and what we're trying to do, and they're getting the exposure. Because there's so many coaches in Canada, and I think our club coaches are doing such an amazing job. But it's unrealistic to think that we're going to be able to work with every single one of those coaches in Canada. So if we provide them a clear pathway, for development, and then we put our resources into that, I see that as the way forward. But these conversations happen. I'm part of them, but they're not my decisions.
Sure, and I think there's a lot of optimism moving forward with Tom Black. Was awesome. We loved him, and we saw that there was obviously a change from the coach prior to Tom Black's philosophies, and now you get to put your own personal handprint on the future of the women's team and Volleyball Canada from coast to coast. So there's a lot of exciting factors there. So I know that at the very start of this conversation you said we should teach kids to pass. Can you go further into that? Because I know there's a lot of different philosophies: passing outside, passing midline, passing whatever, set with your hands at U12, right. All the stuff. Like what do you? Can you just go dive deeper into that sort of mindset?
I think I always want to challenge coaches to be teaching passing to prepare them for the next level. So yeah, you can midline every single ball at 12, 13, and that will give you your best chance of passing the ball correctly. And yeah, midline's great. But the reality is that you don't get to midline many balls at the senior level, and especially internationally. We don't midline balls. So we need to teach them a way, like with the NEP girls, we stress on lateral passing. We talk to them a lot about passing outside our body. We force them into situations where they're passing outside their body more often than not. It's not because I don't like midline passing, it's because you just don't do it at the international level very often. So when we're teaching passing, one of the things that I think that is really important, we talk to our athletes a lot about what they're looking at, okay, and what they're seeing. And that's the start of it. Like start just having them the conversation, teaching them to train their eyes, because this is going to be important for blocking, for attacking, for defense, for everything. But I know as a coach, when I first started coaching, I rarely talked about what are you seeing, like what are you looking at. So teaching them to train their eyes on pass and seeing, the server and the contact point and the zone in which they're going to contact the ball, and really focusing on that to pick up the ball earlier and pick up the direction. When we're passing, obviously you would know that the keys that, or I'm assuming all the coaches would know the keys that, Tom has gone over with, hands and wrists together, straight and simple. I challenge you to always make sure that we go with our platform first and form on the line. So if we know the ball's coming to my left, I'm going to form on my line early. I'm going to get that platform out first. And then when I have to move, because I'm probably going to have to move, then I'm going to shuffle. But what I see with a lot of passers is young passers, they shuffle first and then they form their platform. But your platform is the most important part of this skill. You could be doing the jig, and as long as you manage your platform, you can pull off a pass. So if your platform is the most important part, why are we forming it last? Why are we leaving it to the last minute? Let's get that out there first. Let's form that first, get that on the line of the serve, and then shuffle if we have to. And the other thing I always talk about with the athletes is they start to do that, but then they don't understand how to manage their platform. So we talk about platform to target. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And the rotation that's required for you to make these big angles is just like hitting. So being able to rotate your body around. So we talk about, okay, platform to target, which part of your platform to target. So the keys aren't any different to, what Tom was teaching, but I would like to see more at a younger age, them training more lateral passing, training their eyes to see the ball early, getting our platform outside of our body first, moving our feet second. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Brenda Willis, I'm almost positive, Ontario. Do you have a specific footwork pattern you prefer for setters? Are you a fan of pivot setting?
I'm a big fan of pivot setting. I'm a big fan of pivot setting because I want to play as fast as possible, as fast and fearless as possible. And we want to play as fast as possible, up to about 4 meters. And to be able to set with range, we have to be able to, we know that we're going to benefit from the rotation. We know that torque is going to allow us to set with range and keep the speed. And so I'm a big fan of pivot setting. And that's exactly what we teach. That doesn't change in our gym. So we'll always teach to be passing off the net so we can make a move to the ball. And we're always going to teach them to go off 1 foot so that they can benefit from that rotation. And I get a lot of questions going, well, what if there's a perfect pass? Why can't they set off 2 feet? The reality is we've got to be a master at 1 foot. It's like you don't teach kids to cheat the system before they know the system. Make them a master off 1 foot. Then if they need to go to a 2 foot situation, fine. But we're not going to teach them to go to the easy 2 foot before they go to the 1 foot. The other thing being is that you're talking about a perfect pass. And yeah, they probably don't need the rotation to get the speed if it's a perfect pass. But how often are we passing perfectly? More often than not, the ball's passed forwards or back. There's a bit of a shift. And so for them to make that shift and be able to throw the ball back with speed or throw the ball forward with speed, they're going to need that rotation. So we teach them that pivot. The other thing being there's multiple ways to doing things, but if you spend all your time at training allowing all this variability and all this variation, you become a jack of all trades, not a master of one, And so we teach a simple, less complex way of doing things that becomes repeatable. And so if we're teaching them off 1 foot on a perfect ball, sure, that's the way we're going to teach them because we want them to be perfect at it. So that on the shift, they're still doing that same movement. We don't want to add that variability. We want to keep it really simple.
Awesome. I'll throw it over to Sarah.
I just realized I ramble.
No, it's no problem. Oh, Sarah, do you see the question from Andre?
No, I don't. If you want to ask it.
Yeah,
please.
Andre.
I'm not seeing all the questions for some reason.
This is from Andre. What's your ideas? Or hold on, let me go through this here. What are your ideas on guiding the development of volleyball in the country and ensure that similar levels of competition and service can be provided as the NCAA to develop the next national team players? I know we kind of touched on this a bit. So I would talk about just the framework, and I know Andre, sorry to cut your question out here. It was when I post this on YouTube, take a look of club and the next gen program and stuff like that. Danny Medford, like the new president, there for the first 100 days at the helm.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit different to with a brand new national team. Right now, my approach behind talent identification and when do we actually know helps direct where do the resources go. So we leave it up to them. It's an athlete choice of, hey, you need to do something for an hour at this RPE, and maybe it's surfing, maybe it's swimming, maybe it's whatever. But encouraging cross train is part of that when we're building loads and also deloading as well. I think we get it a little bit less in high performance, obviously, because we're a single sport by the time you get to high performance. But encourage them, like when we are taking a break, like don't just be, you don't want to be stationary, you don't want to be stagnant. So what does it look like? Maybe it's not playing volleyball, or maybe it's playing beach volleyball, but it doesn't have to be just volleyball or nothing. Like encourage them and give them ideas on, things that they can do. But you can make it as part of your, like I said, as part of your loading and your deloading as well.
Yeah, that's very good. Pam Brent also asked, what are the structural differences between Canadian National and National Volleyball Association or Volleyball League of America?
You mean NCAA?
Yeah, I think so.
So we get this question all the time, but particularly from like young athletes going like, do I play in the States or do I play in Canada? I think there's tons of factors to consider, but the style of game in Canada is more conducive to international volleyball. Like you can get, obviously there's less subs, so we get more 6 rotation players. There's more of a multi-zone offense because you're not using defensive specialists. Also the season's longer, so we like that. So that's probably the much larger population. So the density of talent is far denser. Here we're just a smaller population, so it's a little bit more diluted, and the challenges have to be, I would say, have to come from the training environment, from the coaches, challenging the athletes with how they can score points or what they're working on, rather than the day-to-day training that you might get in the States, where there's a few more athletes in the gym that are maybe at higher level. But I'm a big fan of the style of volleyball that we can play in Canada, and I think that does complement international volleyball. But I'm also a big fan of the level of volleyball in the NCAA and how that can also benefit our athletes and just having to compete every single day for a starting position, for playing time, for having to perform, and because someone's going to be there just as good to take your spot. I think there's benefit in that as well. But definitely keeps me awake knowing when an outside hitter goes down to the States, and I always ask them to talk to the coach down in the States, like, can you make sure you're going to be a 6 rotation player, like you're going to pass, because we definitely don't have a place on the national team for a left side who doesn't pass. Like that's just not possible in international volleyball. So that is probably the risk of going down south. But I think a lot of programs, it depends on the program. Some of the programs are very, very open to 6 rotation players, and that's just a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah, I agree. Are you good now, Dave?
Yeah, I'm good. We're having some technical difficulties here, but I'm working on it in the background, so it's all good. I know you talk about that, I know that even provincial associations have talked about, we need to be stronger servers and this and that. Is there any, we play well in system. What other sort of aspects of the game you want to really sort of, get into right away with the national team, so that we have a better opportunity to make the 2024 Olympics or 2028?
So one of the tactical things I do want to look at is triple blocking and the benefit of triple blocking.
Okay.
And not necessarily to increase our kill blocks, but perhaps to increase our ability to get more attacks in transition, especially when our opponents are out of system. So we are increasing our serving efficiency, and Tom's done a great job of, I think, really pushing our athletes to change how they were serving, but also what's expected of them from the baseline. So I think that's already in the right direction. If we can continue to increase our service efficiency, naturally we'll find our opponents out of system a little bit more. And I think there's an opportunity for us to add more of a tactical triple block to that, so that can put them into a situation where they're going to have to off speed or at least hit into a zone that we're going to be in, and it'll increase our ability to transition out of that and get a quality of attack. Of course, that relies heavily on our ability to attack out of system. Well, not a system, sorry, in backcourt. So there's a few things there, but I do want to explore that with the national team. That's probably the first thing I want to explore.
What's your? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, keep going if you want to go. I mean, what would be your how will you be remembered? How do you want to be remembered when one day you decide to retire as the national team coach? What sort of dent do you want to have an impact on the game in Canada and with the national team program?
Wow.
That's a hard question.
Wow. I mean, the obvious answer is I want to be known as a coach that helped a team qualify for the Olympics.
Sure.
But besides that, I think I really want to create a program that excites people and that people want to be a part of, and
Sure.
that this is Canada's program. I want this to be something that everyone wants to buy into, everyone wants to support. And I think the biggest thing is for us to qualify. It's not just 14 athletes or 12 athletes who are going to get us there and staff. It's going to be the athletes, the staff, the club coaches, the provincial associations. It's going to be the academies. It's going to be the reps and the nets. It's going to be all of Canada. So how can we inspire Canada? How can we build something that people are excited about? And how can we ensure that we are open and willing to work with everyone throughout Canada? And I think that that is something I really hope to build. It's just something that this is our team. It's not, and I say our as in Canada, as in Canadians. Like, it's our team, it's our program. We did this together. I might be the head coach, but we, like Canada, did this, and that's what I really hope to do. No small task.
I got one question here from Dave Nelson. Do you have my? Oh no, Dave, I don't have your question from before. Sorry, we had some technical difficulty. I'll have you just repost it, and we can go from there. It's regarding weight training for younger female athletes. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's awesome. I think it's really important for first of all, for injury management. Like, one of the biggest challenges we have with NEP is athletes, are they in a physical position to withstand full-time training? And so we do, obviously, programs lean into NEP to prepare them as best as possible. But I truly believe in strength and conditioning at a younger age for development purposes, but from an injury management perspective. And that's why I say, when I talk about coach development, I also talk about coach development pathways. I talk about S&C pathways as well. We work with some amazing strength and conditioning coaches at the senior national team, and they work with the NET program as well. But they want to work with more across Canada. They want to share their knowledge. And how do we create a pathway for those positions as well? So I do think it's really, really important. And it's amazing that you get athletes into NET. They can spend 4 months and every single one makes gains, right? But when you take an athlete who hasn't done a lot of strength and conditioning, you put them into a full-time strength and conditioning program, they put like 2 inches in their verts. Like, it's so cool. But imagine if we have been doing this earlier and longer. So I think there's a lot of benefits to strength and conditioning. I think it really complements where we're headed with our training as well. There's so many clubs and academies out there who are doing such a great job with offering more and more training, more and more on-court and technical and tactical training. So how can we complement that with the physical and the mental performance and the strength and conditioning? I think is going to be, I think that's the next step for us.
Fair. Sarah, throw it over to you.
Something about, what are your thoughts on like a pro league in Canada? Because I know, actually talking to Chad's wife, Anna, from playing in Denmark, she asked me, like, what happens for athletes here once they're done university? Like, and I said, well, unless you make the national program, you're done. Like, you don't, or you go and you play pro, you're done. There's no real opportunity for you to still play at this level. And I know for me, being retired, that's the thing I miss most, is the game day, that level of compete, which is really difficult to find once you're done playing. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on like some sort of pro league happening in Canada?
Sign me up, give me millions of dollars of sponsorship money, and we will have a league. We'll bring in the best international players in the world. It's going to be awesome to keep our athletes at home, where they are with their friends and family, where we can see them and we can be more involved in their continued development over 8 months. Sign me up. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, it's about money. It's about sponsorship. We're a hockey nation, where pro leagues. I mean, geez, they got rid of the Vancouver Grizzlies. If the Vancouver Grizzlies can't survive the NBA, how are we going to have a pro volleyball league? But if you have any rich people listening and you want to donate millions of dollars, billions of dollars, like, yeah, for sure. I think it's a great idea. I think it would be awesome to have a pro league, and I would be all for it, and it would really benefit our national team. And that's one of the disadvantages we have in Canada, is that we don't have our own national league. We have to ask our athletes to make their personal sacrifices and go overseas and perhaps get paid, less money than what they make in a normal career to play pro, and that's hard. And sometimes you lose athletes prematurely, and from the national team because of it. So yes, a national league here in Canada would tick so many boxes for us, but it comes down to money and sponsorship money, and it comes down to people filling seats, and I don't see that happening anytime soon in Canada, but for sure, in an ideal world, it would be awesome.
Yeah, because I find too, when Anna and I were talking about it, she said a lot of these girls haven't even hit their athletic peak yet, because a woman's athletic peak is late 20s, early 30s. It's all of them are finishing before they even really got to experience their full potential. And so you wonder about how many of those athletes that were great in university could have really benefited our national program if, they didn't have to make that sacrifice of going overseas to keep playing. So
yeah, and I think that it's also, could you throw together a league? Sure, but would you be able to create a league where it's at the level required for our athletes to develop to the level they need to qualify for the Olympics? So our goal is that by 2023, the year that we'll be trying to qualify, that our athletes are playing in the top leagues in Europe. And with those top leagues come the top players, which also comes the top salaries. So if we were to have a league in Canada, it's not just a matter of having a league, it's about being able to afford the contracts of the top players in the world to play in it. But yeah, in an ideal world, for sure. I would love that. I would love that. But like I said, Vancouver Grizzlies can't even survive. So
yeah. And also to think about the thoughts on our media coverage too. If we could get more of that as well, maybe that would help increase just funding and overall awareness for volleyball in Canada as well.
I think that's women's sports in general. The amount of opportunity that's been available for women's sports and the growth of women's sports across the world has been awesome. But with that hasn't grown exposure. So not to the level it needs to be. It's kind of just taken off in opposite directions. So yeah, I think women's sports in general needs greater exposure. I think, I make an effort. I have one daughter and 2 sons, and I make an effort to make sure my daughter's out watching other women play sports, because I know I grew up watching men play sports, and I love sports, but I always watch men play baseball. I watch men play lacrosse. I watch men play soccer. Well, no, I'll take my daughter to community to watch, community sports, to watch other girls, even if they're teenagers, play softball, teenagers play lacrosse, and make sure that she sees girls and women playing sport. So yeah, we have a long way to go with exposure. I think that women's sport is making some awesome improvements, but the exposure is not there yet.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So we'll throw it back over to Dave. I think you said you had one more question.
Yeah, just a shout out to One Volleyball League. I know they're trying to do a pro league here in Calgary as well as in Toronto.
Yeah.
So I know COVID, like everyone, is throwing a wrench into their sort of.
Geez, I'll tell you a typical training session for me, and you guys can work out the percentage. Usually play some 2v2 to warm up, and that usually goes for about 15 minutes. It's three passers, live set, bringing the ball back at you. So that's 6v6. That happens for the next 15. But that would be small. That would probably be your small group, and that's probably about 20 minutes. And the last 45 minutes. So the modifications are, we manipulate the scoring and the drill what the focus is, right? So it's 6v6, but we're manipulating as much as possible. And even our small group stuff, it's never initiated by a coach. Sometimes a coach serving in or coach chipping into that live pass. So very, very heavily weighted to 6v6. And when it's not 6v6, it's still as game-like as possible.
Right on. Well, I really want to just take this moment to say best of luck with 2024 and we hope to see the women's team there. But thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be a part of this. I know for the people who are watching, we dealt with some technical issues that you guys probably didn't know about as we were going through this. So we will be posting this on YouTube with a morph of both live streams, and then it'll all be one thing there. So, but anyways, Shannon, it's always a pleasure. I'm so stoked to have you on, and I can't wait to have you on again in the future.
Dave, thanks for having me. You're doing so much. You're doing so much. Anytime you need anything, just let me know.
Sounds good, Shannon.
Nice meeting you, Sarah.
Nice meeting you, Shannon.